Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Omer Pro Noob and welcome to an Elden Ring video. Today I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks on how to beat Godrick the Grafted, the second main boss of Elden Ring. Excuse me if I sound a little bit sick, because I am. Anyway, we're going to be going over the general strategy for beating Godrick the Grafted, along with dealing with his big main special attacks that you will probably have a problem with. So, just taking note in the fact that this video was made assuming that you're doing this solo with a melee weapon, so I'm not accounting for sorcery in terms of strategies. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. So for the main strategy, we're going to keep a middle range, not too close and not too far. Not too close because it's overall easier to dodge most of his close range attacks from a middle-ish range, and not too far because if we're using melee, it's not really of benefit. And even if you are using sorcery, eventually you'll have to convert to melee when you run out of magic. Now in terms of punishing, we're only going to be using 2 attacks at maximum. Never go with 3, or maybe if you don't really have too much time, use 1 light sort of heavy, you know, a quick sort of heavy, and then get out of there. We're trying to use a sort of in and out strategy with Godrick. For his AoE or area of effect, he'll slam his hammer into the ground and laugh a little bit. This has 2 strikes which do have a longer startup and recovery from other attacks. Don't go too far away from his second strike, as you'll lose your opportunity to punish more than usual. This is one of the only attacks where you could hit him 3 times with a slower weapon like a greatsword. So next up is his combos. The first combo is signified when he starts winding up his axe backwards. Use the time it takes to create distance for the next 4 hits. You can like either roll or like sprint away, or just back away slowly. Depends on really how close you are, but make sure you're out of range for the first and other 4 hits. You'll dodge most of the combo, then finally roll into the final hit and punish him. For the second combo, he'll start slamming his axe with an arc. You know, takes a very large amount of time, mind you, so this starts slow enough for you to make distance, but this attack has some really big range, so like roll backwards for safety. You'll be out of his range for the rest of the combo until he lunges forward with his axe like it's a spear. Then you could just punish him. Okay, so his rolling is sort of a follow-up to most of his attacks. It's one of the reasons why I say keep a middle range and back away from him after you punish him. So this rolling thing, usually he rolls in the same direction you do, so really just spam roll and roll backwards away from him. He'll start with his combo and then he'll probably finish off again with his using his axe like a spear move. This little lunging, very easy to punish. You should be fine as long as you don't roll into it with him in the same direction. For his wind attacks, have a little rhythm in mind, okay? So when he starts winding up, you'll know either a roll or the projectiles are coming. For the roll, you can literally just count to 3. Count to 3, and on the 3rd hit, roll, and you'll be able to punish him. For the projectiles, you can count 1, 2 once he puts his axe on the floor, and then dodge on the 2nd hit. Same thing after you roll for the first projectile, count to 2, roll on the 2nd beat. Okay, cool. Now listen, if you're really desperate, well, while he's doing the transition for the 2nd phase, you can actually damage him, so charge up some heavy attacks and you can get about 2 free hits if you fully charge your attacks. This is just for like if you're really desperate, but if you have any sense of honor at all, you won't do this. You won't do this, right? Come on. So for the 2nd phase, I'm literally only going to cover the attacks that involve the dragon, because this dude actually just retains literally all of his attacks from phase 1. There's really not any variation from phase 1, so if you apply the tips I gave you for that phase, you'll be absolutely fine. But for the dragon stuff, there's some specific stuff we need to go over, so let's do it. So for his opening attack, you want to be running as fast as possible. Don't get caught out in the like outer edges of the fire. Get in as close as possible and try to run through the dragon head if you can, or roll through it even, and you should be fine. He also gains this little grab with the dragon head. It's not too difficult to dodge, but also note that when he rolls around, he can follow up the roll with this grab, so if you implement the strategy I went over in phase 1, you should also be fine there. Actually, that's kind of the same with most of his combinations actually in phase 2, as long as you keep the middle range like in phase 1, The dragon head usually will not reach you even though he has some added range with that arm. So he has this projectile attack where he scoops up a bunch of rocks and shoots them at you. Now do not go backwards because that's where most of the attack is actually supposed to land. You should be running forwards towards him and you can get a couple free hits, even 3 if you're lucky enough and if you're close enough. But overall a really good attack to get for RNG. So out of all of the attacks in phase 2 or even in this fight, this is probably the one that's going to kill you the most if you're anything like me on your first playthrough. Now the tip I give is to actually roll forwards and try to get around him and then stick to his butt, basically, which is a golden rule in FromSoft games. But just note that even if you do go forwards, if you're staying too close to his side, the excess fire is still going to hit you. You could also, if you have enough space, go backwards and just kind of mash roll backwards, but I do not recommend doing this unless you have an ample amount of space and you're not too close to, say, the staircases. If you're too close to the staircases, go forwards. That's actually an easier place to get around and behind him, since there's the elevated levels, makes it slightly easier to get away from all the excess flames going sideways and stuff. Now that should be all of the specific attacks in terms of the dragon, and if you're actually using the strategy from phase 1 for phase 2, you'll be able to dodge most of his combinations from phase 1, even with the added range, and even the wind stuff as well. But there's also this earthquake. The earthquake gets a new variation. He does 3 strikes, and I'd say the first strike he does when he raises his axe with one arm is slightly larger than the second one, but it also, I think, takes slightly longer to charge up. So you should be dealing with this the same way as with the first one, just take into account the fact that there's the added range. But deal with it the same way you would deal with the first variation. It's not too different. Just note it's 3 strikes instead of 2 strikes. Don't go running into it on the second strike like a bozo. Alright, so thank you for making it to the end of the video. It's now time for these bonus little tips, little general strategy stuff. I need some incentive to keep you here. So starting off, we're gonna start with staying away from the walls and the stairways, mainly just because you're just gonna get cornered, honestly, with most of his attacks. Overall, you should be having a flow with the boss to where you're staying in the middle-ish area of the arena and mainly in the pathway. If you're going off of the pathway, I feel like you're kind of doing something wrong, or you're just making it harder for yourself. You're probably running into all these obstacles, all the graveyards in the back. So just try and stay in the middle, in the pathway, sort of circle around him. Most of his attacks will allow for this, even the combos. But once you see that you're near the wall, just take note in the fact that, I'm kind of near the wall, maybe I should go around him. So try and go around him, try to find an opening. Then finally, the next thing is overall for almost every single FromSoft boss, not even oh come on bro, it's dogs bro. Anyway, for basically every single FromSoft boss, not even just Godrick. Godrick, yeah, that's his name. I'm gonna call him Rick now. So not even for just Rick. Typically these bosses have a sort of beat, like a 1-2 sort of beat going on with each of their attacks. So if you find an attack that I didn't actually cover in this video, 9 times out of 10 is gonna be with this same beat. I covered it along with the previous attacks, with the rolling and stuff you can count. So keep this beat at the back of your mind when you're about to dodge an attack. It really just helps with being in a flow with these bosses. That's really very, very dynamic. We're trying to be a very dynamic boss fight here. So yeah, that's definitely how you want to do it. You should be fine with all of these tips I gave you, hopefully, if you're doing this solo. If you have a phantom, honestly, this should go either way faster or it's going to be way harder, just because it's harder to focus when Godrick starts like turning around, going like diagonally and stuff. But anyway, so I hope you enjoyed. Stay hydrated, stay calm, and just don't be a bozo. Get good. Good job, me.